AmpLab listeners, and welcome to an interview episode brought to you by the Arts Management and Technology Lab. My name is Angela Johnson, the podcast producer. In this episode, I sit down with Professor Rahul Telang, author of the book Streaming, Sharing, Stealing, Big Data, and the Future of Entertainment. We talk about the role of streaming in the changing technological landscape of entertainment and the arts. Hope you enjoy! All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rahul Telang. I'm a faculty in the Heinz School. I'm in a faculty for almost 20 years. And a lot of work I do at the intersection of technology and entertainment industry, especially movie and music industry. So that's really my area of work and also area of teaching.
Great. So you wrote a book in 2016 with Michael D. Smith called Streaming, Sharing, and Stealing, and it's about like big data and how new technologies are changing creative industries. I read it like this week. It's good. And I was wondering if you wanted to talk about that a little bit, because that's really a lot of stuff that we've been talking about on the podcast.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most interesting thing, and I didn't realize that whatever the book says actually is coming true. The whole purpose of the book was how the data and analytics is reshaping the whole music and the movie industry. So at that time, Netflix had just started coming in and started getting popular. And one of the things that we talk in the book is that the Netflix was able to be so successful because it was able to get the data from the users, because it had one-on-one programming. So whatever I did, Netflix could capture, and that allowed them to able to personalize the offering to me, and it also allowed them to actually figure out what people like. So, what kind of genre people like, what kind of show they should make, what kind of show they should promote to individuals. So, this whole big data actually started playing a much bigger role in the entertainment industry, which is so till that point, entertainment industry had been basically driven by creative people and not necessarily by marketing personalization. So it typically used to be theater, everybody go and watch it, then it goes on DVD, everybody go and watch it, it goes on TV, everybody goes and watch it. So basically there was a very little so-called personalization. So it was like a cookie cutter product. You like, you take it or leave it. And typically they had done really well. I mean, studios had done so well at some level, and Netflix basically came in with a different perspective. And the book essentially talks about how Netflix was able to come in, be successful, and it sort of basically mentions about the future, that where are we going. And essentially one of the argument was that this big data that the Netflix was able to collect, I think that basically is paving the way for future. So in future, we expect the same thing in some way, that the studios will be able to harness the data and be able to create the product, maybe some pricing too, in such way to fit our needs. And that's really the main takeaway point from the book. Of course, we also talk about piracy. We talk about streaming, so sharing, all kind of thing, but the basic just remain the same. That is, the role of data in the creative industry is having a big impact, a revolutionary impact.
Definitely. I think one of the most surprising things from the book that I learned was about how everything is getting more specific and more like geared towards like us personally. So then you can have your really random, I don't know, hip hop violinist, and that's the thing that you're really into, and that can exist in a way that it couldn't before, just because it had to reach a broader audience.
Yeah, if you think about it broadly, when the studios basically made a movie and presented to the audience, the studios actually did not sell directly to the audience. It went through the theaters, went through the cable companies, went through the DVD players. So they were kind of one step removed. So they never were able to connect with the audience, not the way we think about it, but they could not connect with the audience to be able to figure out what people like and what they don't like. So they had broad idea, but they had no idea at the individual specific level. And that was the major change that Netflix was able to come and introduce. And obviously, as you mentioned, then obviously it had a major impact.
Yeah, definitely. I was also wondering, so the book was in 2016, and do you think that things have changed a lot in the 4, 5 years since then? Like, have things just gotten worse or better, maybe?
I mean, I wouldn't say the worse or better. I just think that the whole issue of streaming has actually accelerated. I mean, if you look at now, if you look at Disney, if you look at NBC Universal, if you look at HBO Max, if you so all of these are essentially carving out a streaming niche for themselves. They fully well realize that they cannot rely on the old strategy to be able to compete in the market. They have to have their own streaming platform. And in last 4 months, the number of streaming players who have entered the market is basically exponential. So what I think is going to happen is over the next 2 3 years, these streaming companies are going to compete heavily, and eventually there's going to be some consolidation. There's going to be a winner, and I think that going forward, our way of consuming movies, TV, or even music is going to be like a streaming. So it's going to be some combination of streaming, theaters, but the streaming part is here to stay. you know I think the TV industry essentially is sort of, that we know, is kind of dead. I'm working on a paper trying to think about the cable company, the how many people are kind of giving up on the cable, and that number is kind of astonishing. So again, 5 years down the line, I mean, that thing is going to become a thing of past. It's going to become these streaming players who are going to become the major players in this space going forward. So again, what I said, that our book never actually predicted this pandemic, but this pandemic actually has accelerated the growth of the streaming player in a very huge way. And I think it's going to have a major impact on how the movies are made, how they are marketed, and how the whole value chain is going to be reorganized. Like, who has power, how will the actors fit in, how will the directors fit in, how will the distributor fit in. I think the whole thing is going to go through a major shakeup going forward.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I don't know anybody really who still watches TV, like network television. So
If you look at the number, that number is still pretty large.
another thing that I found interesting in the book was just how, like, at the beginning of like the music and television and movie industries, like from the beginning, there have been these like really large companies that basically have had all the power. And I feel like now it's different companies because now it's like streaming companies that have all the power, but it's still just like a few players basically in the game. And I'm wondering, like, even as we're getting more niche content and more independent creators, like, is there a future where it's not still just like 3 or 4 companies that have all the, like, this monopolistic power?
I mean, the whole economics of this market works that, a few companies have to become the dominant players, because the movie budget is so large to be able to sign up the director, the actors, make the movie up to the mark. That requires some serious investment. And that automatically means that too many players cannot come in and pop in. I mean, they can all make small movies, so they can make small, television content. I think that will happen, but when it comes to the big one, the one that kind of catches our attention, I mean, that is going to be always dominated by 3 4 major players. So as you say, now the shape will change. The studios which used to be the big players, some form of that will basically merge with the streaming player, and they might become big players. Netflix, it didn't even know we didn't even know, like 10 years ago, it was basically a niche company. And now it has become a major player. So again, going forward, it won't be surprising that they become the dominant player going forward, making movies, TV serials, all the content. But again, as I mentioned, that whole the economics of this market work, that it has to be consolidation. It has to be three, four major players who are going to play a major role.
Hmm. Yeah. I guess mostly I just worry if like Disney makes all the movies, then the only movies out there or the only major blockbuster movies are Disney.
If you look at HBO Max, if you look at NBC Universal, if you look at Netflix, they're all big players. They have the money. I think, again, the whole thing is kind of really, kind of uncertain. The whole thing is kind of shaking out. How will the movie industry emerge? How will the big movies are going to be made when the theatrical revenues kind of go down? But again, you never know. I mean, the whole thing is shaking out. How the movies are going to be made, marketed, what the budget is going to be, I think that we cannot make prediction right now.
That's fair. I feel this is all still really new technology, even as we're moving so rapidly away from what was the norm for so long. It's still really new. So I think one thing that is really important is just embracing these new technologies, like questioning them and like understanding them, but also embracing them. And I feel like a lot of arts organizations are not famous for that outside of the movie and television industry. And I feel like that's one of the reasons, like, museums and theater and everything, and they're all trying, especially now during COVID, and you have to use technology or you're not going to get your content out there. But, like, do you have any advice for people in the arts and nonprofit and like creative industries that are trying to stay ahead or keep up with these new like big data ideas?
Yeah, I mean, it has become less strategic and more like survival. So if you think of Netflix, it was more like a strategic to be able to get the data, use the data to be able to create the content. I think in this world with the COVID, it has become more like a survival. So the goal is less about collecting data to be able to create the content that the people like. It's more about how do I get the content to the user and to be able to make up for the revenue that I'm losing. So for example, again, you might know it, might not know it. If you look at the concert, that has really had a major impact, because people can't go on these concerts, and concerts the major way for the artist to make money. So nowadays, a whole market has shifted toward what is called as a live stream, where they have a concert, but the concert is online, and you actually pay for it. So again, my feeling is that that kind of model is probably gonna go forward in some form of or some shape or form. So I can imagine going forward there will be some live stream. So somebody might have a concert maybe in LA, and there might be a live stream that somebody in Korea, somebody in South Africa might be able to enjoy the concert from their home using the live stream. So I think that going forward, some sort of business model is going to emerge where whatever we know currently will kind of coexist or merge with what is known as the traditional way of doing business. So whether it's museum, whether it's concert, whether it's any other event, the I think some sort of hybrid model. It all depends on how the economics are going to work. But I feel like right now there's no hybrid. There's just a way to survive. There's just a way to get the technology in front of people to be able to fulfill the need. And I'm sure that the uptake level is really small. So if you're making like $1 million, now you're lucky to make 200, 300,000. But that provides a window into where the future might hold. And I am pretty sure that, especially with the art, the technologies come in such a way that it's going to merge with the traditional way of the way they market, present their product services to the user. I think it's going to merge with this internet in some way that we are going to see a much more robust market going forward. So in particularly, for example, I want to go to a concert, but the concert is maybe say in Kansas City. I cannot go it, I cannot attend it. But if you have a live stream, then maybe I'm able to do that. So the reach of the concert, the reach of the artist might go up actually significantly more than what is currently happening. But again, the economics have to play out. All the pandemic has done that it has provided some alternatives to individuals, and whether those alternatives actually become economically sensible remains to be seen, but I think that's what is going to happen.
Yeah, I have said this before on our podcast. I think one of the really interesting things about the pandemic, obviously, it's not good, but it has opened up a lot of opportunities, and like as people are adapting, suddenly you can see a concert that's nowhere near you, or you can see a live stream of a show that you didn't have access to before. I mean, Hamilton being the obvious example, but like really there's so many different ways that people are adapting, and I think the thing with the internet is that like accessibility and convenience are the things that are moving everything forward. And this is almost forcing like arts organizations to catch up with that in a way where, if yeah, it's like you said, it's a matter of survival.
If you look at art, it's basically very in person. So everybody has to be in person to be able to enjoy. Technology is very impersonal. Nobody has to be there. It's all remote. So what we are seeing is that in person is kind of combining with the remote, and I feel like some happy medium is going to emerge. It will depend on what what particular context it is in, whether it's a museum, whether it's a concert, whether it's something else. But I think some happy medium in some context is going to emerge, and that is going to be where the future is going to look like.
Mhm. Definitely. Like there's no replacing live theater, but if you can't be there, then there should be good alternatives.
Absolutely. I actually think that the way technology is playing a role in the art industry is going to be revolutionary. So, this is the area that one should be there actually. If you're a researcher, this is a really right area. If you're a participant, if you're an artist, if you're a recording label, if you're a movie studio, I think this is going to be a major change. It's going to be great opportunities. It's going to be a great destruction too. The traditional players who have been really dominant for say last 50 years, I think their business model has shifted in a tremendous way. So I feel like as a society, as a researcher, as an artist, this area is going to be a major change, a majorly interesting area going forward.
Yeah, I agree. I guess that's pretty much it then. Thank you so much for joining us.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to the AMP Lab podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and to leave a comment. If you would like to learn more, go to amplab.org. That is amt-lab.org. Or you can email us at amplabcmu@gmail.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Tech in the Arts, or on Instagram, Facebook, or LinkedIn at Arts Management and Technology Lab. You can find the resources that we referenced today in the show notes. Thanks for listening. See you next time.